I heard of you, man. You're famous.
Yeah, I guess I am.
Do we really know Tom Petty? His life was filled with untold stories that even his most devoted fans might not know. So brace yourself for 20 shocking revelations that will blow your mind. 20. He rocked the mic as a King of the Hill character. Alright, let's dive into the coolness that is Tom Petty on King of the Hill. In 2009, Mike Judge, the brain behind the show, leaked to the Chicago Tribune about snagging Tom Petty for a voice gig. Now, they weren't aiming for subtlety. They straight up described the character as Tom Petty without the success. Brutal, but it worked. Turns out, getting Petty on board was a wild ride. Judge admitted it was a bit of a shot in the dark, like, hey, let's see if Petty's up for this. And guess what? Shock of shocks, Petty wasn't just up for it, he was all in. The dude who rocked the stages was down to lend his voice to a cartoon character. Talk about a curveball. So Petty steps into the recording booth, and according to Judge, he didn't just hit the mark, he straight up killed it at the table read. Lucky, the character they cooked up for him became more than a one-time guest star. Petty stuck around as a series regular for a whopping 5 years. That's commitment, folks, from the guy who could have just kicked back, strummed his guitar, and called it a day. King of the Hill might have been a love it or hate it deal, but Petty's stint on the show was a hidden gem. A rock legend voicing a character that's basically his alter ego without the big success. Now that's a story you can't make up.
Lucky. Why they call you Lucky? True story. I was at Costco one day and all of a sudden the nature called. Yelled is more.
19. He once was a gravedigger. Back in 2011, Meg Griffin, the host of Tom Petty's Buried Treasure on SiriusXM, asked listeners to submit questions for Tom Petty. When she threw in the influence question, Petty responded with some insightful commentary. Petty first revealed his musical background, and you probably know what got the whole thing started. The music that used to play in teenagers' beat-up cars is good old AM radio. Furthermore, Petty didn't waste money on his first record purchase. Instead, in 1962, he used the money he earned from trading in Coke bottles for the Marvelettes' Playboys single. Now, see young Tom Petty, not yet a rock legend, but a gravedigger clocking in for the job. Petty saying it was a gig where he didn't have to look too sharp, just a regular guy doing what he had to do to make ends meet. And then there's the tale of the mysterious Tom Petty tree at the University of Florida. Rumor had it that Petty planted it, but he shut that down real quick. The creative genius behind the rock hits wasn't moonlighting as a tree planter at the university.
Before he became one of America's best-loved musicians, Tom Petty held an early job as a gravedigger.
18. He was a heroin addict in the 90s. Let's pull up a chair and get real about Tom Petty's rough patch, the one he revealed in that unauthorized biography by Warren Zanes. Now, it's called unauthorized not because Petty was being all secret squirrel, but because he laid it out straight. No holding back, no filter. He just told Zanes, say what you gotta say, man. 50-year-old Tom Petty, a rock god by all accounts, opens up about his dance with heroin. This wasn't your usual headline-grabbing tale. It was like Tom invited you into his living room, cracked open a beer, and said, "Let me level with ya." Zane stated it clearly when he revealed the information to the Washington Post in 2015. Petty turned to heroin when life's blows became too hard. It was real-life issues, not some glitzy Hollywood thing. Petty was living alone, engulfed in the drama of his divorce, and struggling with the crushing realization that he had no control over his children's destiny. As Zanes described it, midlife hit him like a freight train, pinning him to the mat. Petty wasn't trying to become the poster child for his heroin gig by yelling about it from the top of the roof. Not at all. He didn't want people to think it was a cool alternative, so he kept quiet. Not, hey, try this at home, kids, but more along the lines of, look, I went through the ringer and it ain't the answer. Petty's story was a cautionary tale, a heart-to-heart chat from a guy who'd been through the ringer and lived to strum another day. No fancy talk, just a human sharing his struggle in the rawest way possible. That's Tom Petty for you. No airs, just real.
My name is Warren Zanes, and my book is Petty, a biography. Tom approached me about the idea of a biography.
17. He played for another band under 2 aliases. Back in '88, the Traveling Wilburys dropped onto the music scene like a cosmic jackpot. Tom Petty, Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Roy Orbison, and Jeff Lynne formed a supergroup. It was like the Avengers of rock and roll, but with guitars instead of capes. The Traveling Wilburys weren't always like this, though. They kind of sort of fell into being the Trembling Wilburys at first. And here's the thing, picking the name Traveling was an error on a guitar pick, not a well-considered choice. These guys were Wilburys, not just rock stars. Like children grabbing candies from a container, each member seized a Wilbury alias. The enigmatic Tom Petty was once known as Charlie T. Jr. Wilbury. However, when they unveiled Volume 3, he went to Muddy Wilbury instead. It's as if they were trading code names for secret agents during a rock and roll espionage convention. The guitar picks held more charm than the names alone. Those little fragments of plastic history became inscribed with the Wilbury family name. And it wasn't just the famous people who used aliases. All of the band members had secret identities, some of which are still kept secret in the rock and roll vault.
Got somebody to lean on.
16. His friendship with George Harrison. Now let's explore Tom Petty and George Harrison's genuine friendship. These men were tight, like peanut butter and jelly, like 2 peas in a rock and roll pod. We're not talking about business friends or casual pals. Warren Zanes, the one who revealed the information about Petty's heroin addiction, claimed that it was a friendship-based, full-fledged love affair rather than just a partnership. It's not a Hollywood script. Rather, it's the real deal about 2 people who connected on a level that most of us can only dream about. As Zanes puts it, no matter how corny it might sound, they were kind of falling in love with each other. Zanes painted a picture of a friendship so rare it's like finding a 4-leaf clover in a field of daisies. At their level of rock star success, true friendships are like unicorns, almost non-existent. When Petty and Harrison got together for the Traveling Wilburys, it wasn't just another gig. It was happiness cranked up to 11. Zanes even said it was the happiest he'd ever seen Petty. Furthermore, Petty's disclosure to NPR about Harrison wasn't limited to flowery language and lyrical talks. He referred to Harrison as his older brother, the one he could ask about any issues or any problems he was having. It was a spiritual rather than merely a musical connection. Harrison, according to Petty, gave him a sense of something more than guitar strings. Petty's Beatles fandom started way back when he was just a 13-year-old kid watching them on The Ed Sullivan Show. But when he and Harrison became buddies, it was instant. And though Petty held on to thousands of memories, he kept them close to his heart. Too many to spill in a single chat.
Got somebody to lean on.
15. Tom Petty was abused by his father. Tom Petty, the rock and roll icon, wasn't always living in the spotlight. He carried some heavy baggage from a childhood marred by violence. In a candid chat with Men's Journal back in 2013, Petty peeled back the layers of his past, revealing a story woven with pain and resilience. His roots trace back to a Georgia logger grandpa who, legend has it, took a man down with an axe for making nasty comments about interracial marriage. Petty's family tree had some wild branches. Fast forward to Petty's own dad, Earl, who soaked up a troubled upbringing in Florida after the family fled Georgia. Tom didn't mince words. His father was an angry drunk, a storm that brewed chaos in their household. Petty's childhood wasn't all doom and gloom, though. His mother stepped in as a light of hope, introducing him to the world of music. That's where young Tom found his sanctuary, away from the wild storm his father brewed. Petty thought his old man despised him because of his love for music and the arts. seeing his passion as the very thing that set off a family firestorm. The implications of his father's rage followed Petty into adulthood like shadows. His soul was scarred by his violent upbringing, which pushed him to rebel against authority. Petty needed some therapy to face his personal demons and anger management problems. It took a toll on everyone around him, and looking back, he said, "I thank everyone who put up with that for as long as they did." 14. He was sorry for displaying the Confederate flag in his shows. Let's talk straight about Tom Petty and that whole Confederate flag mess. Back in '85, during his Southern Accents tour, he hoisted that flag up like it was going out of style. But fast forward to 2015, when South Carolina decided to take theirs down, and Petty had a change of heart. He told Rolling Stone he always knew it had to do with the Civil War, but the South had adopted it as its logo. He didn't really get the whole picture at first. Petty straight up admitted he was kind of ignorant about what the flag really meant, comparing it to a swastika for a Jewish person. Now he connected the dots to his song Rebels and how he had thought the flag would be the perfect visual aid for the song's vibe. But it bugged him, made him uncomfortable enough that he told folks to leave their flags at home when they came to his shows. That's some real talk right there. It wasn't his style, not what he stood for. And when the crowd gave a mixed reaction, Petty didn't bat an eye. Instead, he did what any decent human would do. He tried to make it right. He even went back and scrubbed that flag off the record. He felt bad about it and regretted the whole flag fiasco. He wasn't into hurting anyone with his tunes and shows.
Then we played it and performed it live.
13. How he ended up in a movie flop. In 1997, Kevin Costner unleashed a post-apocalyptic saga on the big screen called The Postman. He's not just the star, he's the guy calling the shots as the director, too. Costner plays this dude roaming the ruins, delivering old letters to sprinkle a bit of hope in a world gone mad. Now it gets interesting. Tom Petty, the rock and roll icon, steps into the scene. Back then, Petty wasn't exactly known for his acting chops, except for those killer music videos. But Costner, being the brain behind The Postman, had a vision. He wanted Petty on board, and not just as an extra. He handed him the role of the leader of a survivor community. The conversation begins when Petty's character encounters Costner's postman. "I recognize you. You're well known," the postman remarks. Giving a nod to realism, Petty responds, "I was once, sort of." If that doesn't shout, "playing myself on the big screen," then nothing does. The Postman only managed to make $17 million at the box office after spending $80 million to get the film made. It was by no means a smash hit. Instead of throwing roses, the critics were hurling arrows. Petty, the guy in the spotlight, however, enjoyed every minute of the journey. Petty was at a crossroads when Costner pulled him into this cinematic journey, and he accepted it. According to Petty, "I needed to do something with my time, and this sounded perfect." In the grand scheme of Hollywood hits and misses, The Postman might have been a flop, but for Petty, it was a lifeline when he needed a new groove. Sometimes it's not just about the box office, it's about the journey, and Petty was grateful for the ride Costner offered.
I heard of you, man. You're famous.
Yeah, I guess I am.
12. Tom Petty was a constant marijuana user. Tom Petty, the rock legend we all love, was a big fan of marijuana. He didn't hide it. He talked about it in interviews and even wrote songs about it. It wasn't just a thing he did, it became a part of who he was. In his interviews, Petty was real about how much he loved the calming and creative vibes that came with marijuana use. He saw it as something that sparked his creativity and often mentioned how it played a role in his songwriting process. Listen to You Don't Know How It Feels or Mary Jane's Last Dance, and you'll catch a glimpse of Petty's affection for the green stuff. What made Petty stand out wasn't just that he was into marijuana, it was how he handled it. He wasn't preaching excess or pushing for a wild lifestyle. Instead, he became a kind of role model for people who wanted to enjoy a bit of recreational fun without going overboard. Fans saw him as a down-to-earth guy who knew how to balance things. It wasn't just about the music. Petty's talk about marijuana made him relatable. Fans liked that he was real about it, breaking down the stereotypes that often surrounded discussions about using weed, especially when it was kind of a taboo topic. Tom Petty's legacy isn't just about his awesome tunes, it's also about him being open and honest about things like his love for marijuana. He's remembered not just as a musical genius, but as a regular guy who kept it real and showed that enjoying life responsibly, including a bit of weed here and there, was all part of being human. 11. He strongly opposed big business. Tom Petty is a straight-up rebel when it comes to corporate sponsorships. So Billboard decided to poke the bear in 2005, asking him why he ditched the usual corporate cash injections for his tours. Petty didn't beat around the bush. He wanted those concert tickets affordable for everyone, and sponsorships weren't part of his vibe. It's not heroic, he added, trying not to seem too serious. He then revealed the shocking fact that he had no intention of using his songs as advertising for orange juice. You can't blame the guy. Who wants his anthem to be the jingle for morning beverages? Petty caught flack from some folks telling him he could rake in more cash if he jumped on the corporate bandwagon. But the man stuck to his guns, saying integrity was more important than money. Selling out? Not for him. Making music common and irrelevant? That was the real sellout move in Petty's book. In 2014, NPR made the decision to take it a little further. They questioned him extensively about reconciling his large financial account with his anti-money grubbing position. Petty's response was classic Tom. He didn't trample others to get rich. Instead, he came from modest beginnings, and that was what made all the difference. So there you have it. Tom Petty, the rebel with a cause, giving the corporate big shots the side eye and keeping his music free from the ad world.
People come, people go. Some grow young, some grow cold.
10. Tom Petty was okay with others copying his songs. It didn't bother Tom Petty at all to be a musical party crasher. You know, when your song unexpectedly appears in someone's smash hit? While most musicians would be willing to fight lawyers, Petty wasn't. There was a musical deja vu when the New York Post and Rolling Stone reported in 2006 that Petty could sue Red Hot Chili Peppers for copying Mary Jane's Last Dance in Danny, California. However, Petty chose not to use much legal clout. Petty said he wasn't worried about it, no ill will. When someone questioned if he was going to sue, he basically said, "The truth is, I seriously doubt that there is any negative intent there." He then dismissed the question, saying he might only do so if they had actually stolen his music note for note, which this wasn't. Petty had no interest in arguing in court. "I don't believe in lawsuits much," he stated. "I think there are enough frivolous lawsuits in this country without people fighting over pop songs." In 2015, Petty was surprised to receive a composition credit on Sam Smith's song, "Stay With Me." Similarities were noted, but Petty chose to go with the flow rather than cause a stir. He told Rolling Stone in his trademark laid-back manner, "All my years of songwriting have shown me that these things can happen. A musical accident, no more, no less. There is no drama, simply a tribute to the ups and downs that come with the journey of being a musician."
Inside a little hollow, yeah, keep faces, some things, sometimes.
9. He predicted his last show. Now, let's talk honestly about Tom Petty's last ride on the tour bus. Back in December 2016, he kicked off his 40th anniversary tour, and while the crowd was rocking out, Petty dropped a truth bomb to Rolling Stone. "I don't want to spend my life on the road. That's like the rock star version of, I need a break, guys." After a solid 3 years off the stage, the longest break in a quarter century, Petty spilled the beans about other priorities tugging at him. With grandkids in the picture, he was itching to trade the stage lights for family time. He straight up admitted, "I'd be lying if I didn't say I was thinking this might be the last big one." Talk about a farewell tour vibe. As the concert reached its closing moments, Petty addressed the audience with heartfelt gratitude. "I want to thank you for 40 years of a really great time." His words resonated with fans, acknowledging the shared journey and the enduring bond between artist and audience. Just before walking off the stage, Petty left the audience with a simple yet powerful message. God bless you, good night. Little did they know that this would be his final performance. A week later, Petty passed away after suffering cardiac arrest on October 2, 2017. The final words. Petty's premonition was hauntingly on point. What seemed like just another tour ended up being the last show, leaving fans in the music world stunned. The man who wanted a breather from the road found a permanent exit. It wasn't just a tour finale, it was the last encore for a legend who left us with his tunes and a bittersweet farewell. Eight. He fought his record company over $1. Let's now get into the specifics of Tom Petty's 1981 record label beating spree. He releases Hard Promises, poised to soar on the charts, but the MCA heavyweights choose to rig the price. They introduce a glitzy scheme known as superstar pricing, adding $1 to the CD because, well, they anticipated that Petty's songs would be hit records. But Petty was having none of those expensive shenanigans. He essentially told the New York Times, "Listen, MCA, you've been cool with selling and promoting, but you're missing the street level reality. Bumping up the price ain't fair." And guess what? He was right. Petty drew a line in the sand, not merely complained. It was either nothing at all or $8.98. Petty wasn't about to be the man driving up album costs. Try telling your big shot record label, "Nope, I won't let my fans pay more." $8.98 sounded perfect in his opinion. He was not going to back down, and he was not going to let the suits set the price of his songs. Petty revealed the truth in a conversation with Tom Snyder, acknowledging that he had anticipated this confrontation over pricing increases at some point. The worst part is that even though he held his ground and prevailed, it wasn't just a personal success for him. For those in the audience who merely wanted to buy a record without going broke, it was a victory. So there you have it. The day Tom Petty wasn't just fighting for his tunes, he was fighting for the everyday music lover. A buck might not sound like much, but it was $1 saved for the fans, and that's a win Petty was proud to take to the mic.
On one hand, I think for being big enough to kind of bend to the public opinion because I didn't expect them to, quite honestly.
7. His music influence was Elvis. Let's go back in time and explore the world of a young Tom Petty. His mother was the center of attention and the only source of order in their crazy household when he was a child. These were the songs that echoed his mother's soul, and she had a way of exposing him to songs that added a touch of class. Think Nat King Cole in the musical magic of West Side Story. The TV then appeared. Abruptly, a world beyond the chaos of his familial life revealed itself. The metropolis on TV, Los Angeles, became his way out of the craziness. TV served as an escape for a child caught in the chaos. He stumbled across an Elvis Presley movie set in Ocala when he was 11 years old. Well, little Tom came quite near to having a divine encounter when he met the king. It made a switch flip. He ran home, pleaded with his mother to get him a guitar from Sears, and threw himself into the rock and roll scene. Put the tumult at home behind you. Petty has found his purpose. 14-year-old Tom Petty, fueled by Elvis vibes, started rocking out with his first band, the Sundowners. There was no turning back. The kid who found comfort in TV now found his peace in music, chasing the rhythm of the king. It wasn't just about notes and chords, it was about escaping the mess, finding freedom in the strings of a guitar. 6. He didn't like newer music. Let's explore Tom Petty's down-to-earth take on music and the modern times. His songs, which combined elements of country and rock and roll, had their roots in the golden age that gave rise to the musical icons Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison, and Elvis Presley. Petty, after all, was not one to hold back. When Rolling Stone questioned him about new songs in 2013, he was candid. He was not very impressed by contemporary music. He referred to contemporary country music as bad rock with a fiddle. It lacked, in his opinion, the enchanted quality of legends like Buck Owens or George Jones. Petty was expressing more than simply finger-pointing. He was really disappointed in the way his beloved music was going. But he was shaking his head about more than simply country music. He admitted to Esquire in 2006 that it would have been difficult to launch a career in that time period. The radio has turned into a playlist machine that consistently plays the same songs. Petty didn't mince words when he said that people favored the familiar over the unfamiliar. In Petty's world, music wasn't just about chords and lyrics. It was a vibe, a feeling, and he didn't shy away from speaking up when he thought things were missing the mark. It's like having your favorite uncle tell you straight up, "Hey, I miss the good old days of tunes that had a soul." Petty kept it human, real, and maybe a bit nostalgic for a time when music felt like magic.
Found it interesting, and the songs were coming easily. I never intended to paint a complete picture of the South, you know.
5. He bankrupted himself intentionally. Let's take a look at this crazy journey into Tom Petty and the music industry. The Heartbreakers were enmeshed in the dubious business practices of the time back in 1979. Petty was not having it when they were thrown into the MCA deal after being with Shelter originally. Not the kind of contract love he was feeling. He bluntly compared it to being bought and sold like a piece of meat. They had 2 killer albums selling like hotcakes, but the cash wasn't rolling into their pockets. It was because artists had to pay back every dime, from advances to marketing costs, studio time, and tour expenses, before seeing a dime in royalties. Petty smelled something fishy, and he wasn't wrong. The album that everyone is familiar with and adores, Damn the Torpedoes, was the main event. Petty was stuck in a murky arrangement, but he wasn't about to ditch it. He decided to take matters into his own hands and incurred a hefty $500,000 debt in order to cover the recording and production charges. Yes, he went bankrupt deliberately. He did it to change the storyline. It was a bet to obtain some leverage in court, a power maneuver. Petty's filing for bankruptcy was his best chance of breaking that unfair arrangement. The only option available to MCA was to give in, resign the Heartbreakers, and guess what? When Damn the Torpedoes was released, it became an instant hit. How about making a rock and roll comeback out of bankruptcy? Petty engaged in the game, turned the tide, and emerged victorious. 4. How one of his songs took a long road to success. Hey, here's a cool story for you. So we all know Tom Petty, right? Legend. But there's this little gem of a song, Love is a Long Road, not exactly a chart topper back in the day. It's like that hidden track you stumble upon in an old CD. Flash forward to 2023 and the game Grand Theft Auto 6 hits the scene. In a brilliant move, Rockstar Games includes Love is a Long Road in the first official teaser. That really changes everything. In less than 2 days, that YouTube trailer drew over 100 million views. And what do you know? Like treasure hunts following a pirate map, people begin searching for that song. Then things really start to roll. Love is a Long Road goes viral on music streaming services. According to representatives from Spotify, weekly listens have increased by an astounding 36,979%. That's the actual number, not a typo. Replay buttons are being pounded like there's no tomorrow. So, what's the moral of the story? Sometimes all it takes is a fresh spotlight to turn an underrated track into a streaming sensation. Tom Petty's Love is a Long Road might have taken the scenic route to fame, but thanks to a badass video game trailer, it's now cruising on the highway of posthumous success. It's like the song said, love is a long road, and we're gonna find our way.
There was a girl I knew.
3. A broken hand nearly ended his career. It was not your normal walk in the park. Rather, as drummer Stan Lynch described it, it was more akin to a wild dance with the devil. Alright, let's pull back the curtain and reveal the havoc that occurred during the recording of Southern Accents. Petty was engulfed in a creative crisis, and things were spiraling out of control. The drugs didn't help either. They just added fuel to the fiery mess. One day, Petty hit a breaking point. Frustration boiling over, he stormed out of the studio Hulk style and unleashed his wrath on a wall, shattering his hand. Talk about a rock and roll meltdown. Petty spilled the beans later, admitting he'd been grinding on the album for over a year, thinking he was finally done. But reality hit when he listened to a track and knew it still wasn't right. The frustration wasn't just about fury, it was about that relentless pursuit of perfection. The broken hand could have been a career ender. His doc laid it out. Playing guitar might be off the table. But Petty, being the defiant spirit he was, proved them wrong. By the year 85, all that remained of the evidence was a scar, a wound from the struggle between art and annoyance. In 2012, Petty mentioned the old injury acting up, but he shrugged it off as just a sign of aging. The dude faced a career-threatening moment head-on, punched through the chaos, and came out swinging.
My hand, and I broke it really good. And I haven't done that since, you know.
2. The Eagles' Don Felder gave him his first guitar lessons. Tom Petty's guitar journey began in a cool way. In small-town Florida, a local music store, and two future rock legends crossing paths. Tom Petty and Don Felder, who would both become famous guitarists in different bands, met each other in the same Gainesville music store. This chance encounter marked the start of Petty's lifelong passion for music and guitars. Don Felder has now revealed details about his early years, going on to create waves with the Eagles in the future. He was working hard in the store back then, trying to accrue enough credit to buy some equipment. Part of his gig was giving guitar lessons. And who do you think came in one day? A skinny, blonde-haired child who wanted to rock the strings. Tom Petty. Felder shared the story of those lessons turning into a friendship. They jammed together, hung out, and you could say those guitar lessons left a mark on young Tom. It's like the rock and roll version of a mentor passing down the torch. Not everyone enjoys thinking back to when Felder taught Petty. A devoted Eagles fan was ejected from the venue for yelling at Don Henley's introduction of the band's new guitarist, according to Ultimate Classic Rock. But that earned him a one-way ticket out from security thanks to the fan who said, "Hey, Felder taught Tom Petty." It's a slice of rock history told without the frills. Just two guys, guitars in hand, making music happen in a humble music store. Tom Petty's roots might have started with scraggly hair and guitar lessons from Felder, but those humble beginnings turned into rock and roll magic that's still echoing today.
How to play just regular basic guitar. Tommy never went on to be a great guitar player, but a great songwriter, and he had
1. How he died. Just before Tom Petty kicked off a rockin' 40th anniversary tour with the Heartbreakers in 2017, life threw a challenge. A fractured hip for Petty. Now, try standing, strumming that guitar, and belting out tunes with a busted hip. Brutal, right? Despite the pain, Petty, true to his commitment, hit the stage for 53 concerts, turning his fractured hip into a full-blown broken one. The man soldiered on, not letting the pain steal the show. In a statement, his family revealed the information, providing us with a glimpse of Petty's perseverance. Despite this painful injury, he insisted on keeping his commitment to his fans. Then, in September of 2017, Petty received the shocking news that he had a shattered hip. He had a hip replacement scheduled, but instead chose to stay at home with his wife and puppy. He wanted some time to himself, not to rush to the hospital. That's rock great Tom Petty, who has a soft spot for his house and family. Petty had to deal with more than just a fractured hip. Potent prescription painkillers like fentanyl became his friends. In addition to fighting the physical agony, he struggled with emphysema and knee problems. And then came the heartbreaking turn of events on October 1. Petty's voyage came to an end due to an unintentional overdose of those pills. It's an honest story of a rock star dealing with life's stresses, a fractured hip, and a fight with painkillers. The man who rocked stages, Tom Petty, handled the highs and lows of life with the same spirit of rebellion that inspired his music. Ultimately, it's about the person behind the rock and roll legend, not simply the lights on stage.
How's it going? Anything new?
As we wrap up this journey into Tom Petty's extraordinary life, share your thoughts and favorite Tom Petty moments in the comments below. Thanks for watching.